you trying to dominate your fantasy football league? Do you want so many championship rings it's impossible to sign autographs? Well, crack open a beer, pour yourself a glass of bourbon, and settle in, because you've come to the right place. Welcome to Hammercast.
Hey guys, welcome into a new series called Dynasty Debates, being brought to you by the Hammercast Network. I'm your host, Calvin Timms, and I'm joined by fellow Hammercast host Kevin Coleman, and we're excited to bring you a series of off-season debates laying out two different arguments on a hot topic in the Dynasty community. This week, we're going to be debating which player you'd rather have for your starting lineup. The hottest rookie of the 2020 draft season, Clyde Edwards Helaire, or one of the most explosive backs in the league right now in Joe Mixon. The format of these debates is going to be very simple. Kevin's going to lay out his case for Joe Mixon, and I'm going to follow up with my case for Clyde Edwards Helaire. After we both make our cases for our guys, I'll have the chance to give my points on why you shouldn't be as hot on Mixon, and then Kevin will do the same for Clyde. Ultimately, you guys get to decide who made the stronger case and why. Kevin, you ready to get this thing started?
Yeah, let's go. You picked the perfect guy for me. I'm a Mixon truther, so I am ready to kind of roll, and I'm excited to have you run this thing. I'm excited for it.
All right. Well, let's hear what you got for Mixon. Why should we be excited about Joe Mixon?
Okay, so I understand Mixon has burned a lot of people in the past, and he was someone for me that was on my Mount Rushmore. So he was my dynasty running back Mount Rushmore last season. I'm not this season, but last season. And for me, he's young. I've always felt like he was explosive at Oklahoma. And when he was there, he has the ability in the receiving game, something that I get really frustrated with Zach Taylor, because I think you can use him in the receiving aspect of it. They did just get rid of Gio Bernard. So you're going to kind of lose him now. The only other guy they got is Travion Williams. And even though I'm stashing him because I'm a degenerate, I know who that is. I think Mixon will get a high share of usage and volume. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons behind one of the worst offensive lines in football, according to PFF, before his injury. So he did see that. We saw them kind of shift their offensive line to more of a zone scheme last year or 2 years ago. And then last year they kind of saw the same thing, but he just couldn't get off there. I think that they're going to improve the offensive line. I hope they pick an offensive lineman with the 5th pick. So I can see that being a kind of a case. I think that they're going to have an improved offensive unit. Higgins looks like the real deal. They got rid of, AJ Green's carcass. He's gone. They got Tyler Boyd. They got Joe Burrow. Hopefully his knee heals. So they have an improved offense, improved offensive line. He got a contract. So they paid him. So they're going to use him. So for me, I know that they want to get him involved. I think he has a very cheap ADP right now. According to kind of DLF, looking at kind of where he's going, I've seen him go as far as the late 4th, early 5th in dynasty leagues, where CEH is a little bit more pricier to me. So with Mixon's potential, I'd rather take the shot on Mixon than a CEH in that area. So those are kind of my main reasons. Plus, I just think he's talented as hell. Like, he can play. And I think that they got to unleash him a little bit.
All right, those are fair points. Now, before I rebut any of those points, let me lay out my case for why I think you should go all in on Clyde Edwards Helaire this offseason. Last year, Clyde Edwards Helaire was drafted in the first round by the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the most exciting prospects in Dynasty that I've seen in a long time. It was consensus RB1, him and Jonathan Taylor. He didn't have the best season last year, and he kind of fell off the radar for a lot of people in Dynasty right now. And my biggest thing with Clyde Edwards Helaire, when he was coming out into the NFL from college, he did not have the most polished pass protection of all those guys, right? But the good news for him is not many running backs have great pass protection, and you can learn how to be a good pass protection guy. So it's something that he can definitely improve as time goes on. And the crazy stat is last year, Kansas City was the number 5 passing team in the entire NFL. And that's with them going 13-3. So if Clyde Edwards Helaire is getting pulled on third down because he can't really pass pro and he's not getting all the opportunity on third down, just think what he could do if he gets a little bit more play time. So last year, he only played 13 games. He had the high ankle sprain, so he missed 3 games going into it. And the nice thing about that is the high ankle sprain, it's not a long-term injury. It's not something that's going to concern me long-term. It's not like a ligament, like a groin or a hamstring, something that just kind of plagues guys year after year after year. So the high ankle sprain should be something that we don't really have to worry about. There's no reason not to project him for 16 games this year. And then if you tell me that he's going to improve in pass pro, he's going to be on the field more, I think it's just going to be more opportunity for him. So through 13 games, just some crazy stats for him. He had 181 carries on the fifth highest passing offense in the league, which means they're the fifth lowest rushing team. And he still almost had 200 carries in 13 games. That means he was getting almost all of the carries for the running backs for the team. It's just they don't run it as much as some of the other teams out there. On top of that, he also had 54 targets last year in 13 games. That's everything you need from a volume standpoint from a running back. So he's a guy that has a high volume floor, and he didn't have a lot of touchdowns last year, but that's something that could definitely be improved. He could get on the field more with pass pro. If he gets more targets, he could definitely, if he was on the field more in third downs, you could see him around 75 to 80 targets in 13 games. Imagine that over a 16 game pace. You could see him getting Christian McCaffrey level targets in the passing game. So I'm very high on Clyde Edwards Helaire because of the volume alone. I think that alone can give him top 10, top 5 potential. Now, my case against Joe Mixon is pretty straightforward. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but Joe Mixon, my biggest problem with Joe Mixon is he's not consistent. He is always injured. He hasn't played a full season in a couple years now. Last year, he only played 6 games. And there's arguments that he is very young. He can definitely, everyone's injury prone until they're not, right? And this could be the year that he gets it all together and he plays the whole season. It's just hard for me to bank on that. When he plays on the field, he is very productive for fantasy. The problem is he just doesn't miss consecutive games. It's never known when he's going to miss. So he's going to hurt you in the middle of the season. And all of his injuries so far have been like the ones that do worry me. Unlike Clyde's high ankle sprain, he's had groin injuries, he's had hamstring injuries, and they kind of just plague him over the last couple of years. So those things, the injury history does make me very nervous about Joe Mixon. On top of that, like you said, if hopefully they take Penny Sewell with the number 5 pick. But this being the Cincinnati Bengals, I just have a very strong feeling all the reports out there are that they're going to take Jamar Chase at number 5. And if they take Jamar Chase, that is going to be a detriment to Joe Mixon specifically because for 2 reasons. One, Jamar Chase is going to be stealing targets from somebody. With T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd, that offense is loaded in the passing game, right? And they're not going to be passing the ball as much as most people think they will because the offensive line will be taking a massive hit. I understand the argument is, oh, we're going to pass on Penny Sewell because there's more than one round, right? We can get a guy in the second round. But there's not anybody in the second round that's more guaranteed to be a long-term starter than Penny Sewell is at number 5. So if you want to lock up that offensive line, get Penny Sewell. I just have a feeling they're not going to do that. So if the offensive line is not improving and they're adding another skill player like Jamar Chase, who's going to be an alpha guy, that also hurts Joe Mixon in my opinion, that it could be detrimental for fantasy. So that's my case against Joe Mixon. What do you think about that? And what are your thoughts on Clyde?
So, like, when going to Mixon, I think people forget in 2018, he finished as running back 10 in PPR format. So he was a running back 1, low end running back 1. I know he got hurt the couple games that you're talking about. And then you fast forward to next year, he was running back 17 in 2019 in PPR formats. According to Fantasy Pros and their website, you can kind of intermix. So we're still talking. I think the problem that people have, they perceive with Mixon, is that he's supposed to be putting in these running back 1 numbers. And if you're drafting him like a running back 1, you might have been in some issues and you might have some problems there. But if you were drafting him as a running back 2 or 3, I still think it's fair to say that his ADP right now is around that 3, 4, 5 running back, right? Like, so when you're looking at 3rd, 4th round, you're probably drafting him as a running back 2. I think his value is about what it should be. As far as his health, I mean, he was technically all healthy in 2019. He missed a couple games. He started a couple games and he had to come out because he did get injured. He did see the floor, not the floor, like the basketball coach. He did see the field 16 times. I like him. I do understand what you're saying with Chase. If they take Chase, I will be happy as a Chase owner, but I'm going to be sad as a Mixon owner because that's going to definitely ruin the targets. But I will say the Chiefs have one of the highest passing volume offenses in the league too. So that's going to hurt CEH as well. So that's one of my arguments against CEH. They're going to draft a wide receiver in this round. Like they're not rolling out McCole Hardman again. Like that experiment is over. So they're going to be getting somebody in that second-ish, third round. Right. They're going to bring in there.
I agree with you. Yep.
So that's going to hurt CH too. As far as Mixon goes, I think the talent is there. He did have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I like him more because CEH to me is Mixon ceilings to me is higher. CEH is like you talked about. He's okay, but coming into my draft class last year, and I've watched him. I'm a Debbie guy. I've looked at it. I kind of went through it. CEH was basically running back 4 for me, and that didn't really change the landing.
That's the same. That's the same for me. He was number 4 on my board before the draft. Pre-draft, I wasn't as high on him, but again, the Andy Reid system, drove him up, and it was pretty consensus. Everyone had him RB1 for the most part.
I did not. I did not.
Oh, okay.
I did not go down that train. When Damian Williams opted out, I said, this is the time to sell CEH. And everybody told me I was an idiot out there. And I laughed because you know how the Twitter hive gets on these takes. Yep. And I said, okay, well, we'll see. And then now I'm just like, you probably should have sold him. So because I saw him go in front of CMC in a startup. I had people telling me that have 15,000 followers that I was an idiot because CEH was going to be a top 5 dynasty running back for the next 5 years. Fair. They said this. I haven't.
So my biggest pushback is you say Joe Mixon's ceiling is higher, and that's the only thing where I think that Clyde has a higher ceiling. Because, again, if we're getting into the potentially 80, 90 targets per game or per season, like that right there is a solid floor of targets, especially in a PPR league. And then couple that with the fact that he had one of the most egregious touchdown rates out of anybody in the last few years. It was one touchdown per 45 or so carries, I think it was. So on average, I think it's 1 per 30. On a 16-game pace last year, he would have had about 210 carries. That's about 4 more touchdowns right there than what he got this last year. So I can definitely see his touchdowns going up if he gets to a league average rate of touchdowns. If he gets the passing work on top of that, to me, I think there's top 5 potential for CEH just because of the volume. It's purely volume and explosiveness with that team. He looked good on the ground to me in 2020. It was just the touchdowns weren't there, and then he got the injury. And to be honest with you, there was a little bit of inconsistency in the middle of the season. So Andy Reid kind of does that every now and then where he forgets he has a running back because he just loves to pass so much. But the fact that he feeds, like I said, 13 games, 181 carries on the ground with 56 targets, that's a lot in 13 games. So it wasn't really a timeshare like a lot of people say it was. There was a lot of people being rotated in there. He only had 50%. He only had about 50 to 60% of a snap share, and he was still getting that many touches. So bump that up 5, 10%. To me, he has the higher ceiling over Mixon.
Well, I just think, personally, I think Mixon's way talented, like way more talented. I think as a running back. Now, I
agree with that. I will agree with that.
And that's why I say higher ceiling, because I think that talent will shine through. And really quick about Mixon, before I go over Andy Reid's terrible running system that he goes down there. When we talk about CEH, we're talking about CEH. Burrow was his quarterback, and when Burrow was his quarterback, CEH had 55 catches for 450 yards. You could see that same you could see the Mixon's targets go up because of Burrow, the way he likes to target. Now that's up to Zach Taylor. Hopefully he learned, because if Zach Taylor doesn't start getting these guys the ball, he's going to get fired. This is it for Zach Taylor. This is it.
Well, if he doesn't get an offensive lineman, they won't be able to get them the ball.
Which is fair. So this is all predicated on them getting an offensive lineman. I'm hoping that's what they do. As far as Clyde, the only thing that I worry about, they running back by committee. They've seen I don't even know, Darryl, Damian, whatever the hell Williams out there. They had to bring in Le'Veon Bell. That's weird to me that they looked at it thinking Le'Veon Bell was an upgrade. Le'Veon Bell hasn't been good at football for 2 years. And then they brought him in. So, and I know that.
To be fair, though, with the whole Lev Bell thing, I think that's same with Shady McCoy. It's a little blown out of proportion considering neither one of those guys was active in the Super Bowl for the team. I think it was more they were just trying to help those guys out, get them a ring, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you're a vet. come play for us on a cheap deal. We'll try and get you a ring. You know, I think it's a little name value kind of blew those a little bit out of proportion, in my opinion.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I think in PPR formats, he's a little bit higher. But you got to remember, too, he had those 2 huge games that kind of inflated his numbers a little bit. Like he had the 138 yards, touchdowns against Houston. Houston was bad. We didn't realize how bad Houston was until after that. And then then he had a great game against Buffalo, and that was actually a pretty good game. He had 161 yards. He didn't score, but those were his 2 highest scoring games. And then he had the 2 touchdowns against the Raiders. But after that, it was a lot of 16 for 30, 64, 10 for 40. So I think he was inconsistent. So I think that they are very close. So I will be honest. I do think that these 2 are very close.
They are very close. To me, I just think, again, the injury risk with Joe Mixon, the potential of the offensive line, and all the real quick aside, all the Bengals fans saying, oh, well, we brought in Riley Reef, you know, our offensive line is fixed. You know, my biggest argument against that is Riley Reef was cut by the Minnesota Vikings. They had the chance to restructure his contract. Instead, they chose to cut him. You think that the Minnesota Vikings, who every single person out there is mocking an offensive lineman to in the first round, is if they were so desperate for offensive line help, they would have kept him. So thinking that he's going to save your offensive line is just crazy talk to me. But
at least they're improving it, right?
They're trying.
And the Chiefs did lose some offensive linemen as well. I mean, they brought in some good guys back, and we talked about that with Long and those other guys coming there, and I've mentioned that on podcasts before. I think that they're kind of in a state of flux, but I just think that with Burrow's injury, they're going to kind of lean on Mixon maybe earlier in the year. Then they would lean on with CEH because Mahomes is going to throw the ball a ton. I mean, they're going to use Mahomes in a lot of different ways. They improve that passing game. So that's what I'm worried about. I would just rather have Mixon in my ADP right now in Dynasty kind of debate. Who would I want? I would trade CEH straight up for Mixon in a Dynasty league. That's what I would do.
All right.
But I'm a Mixon truther, so I'm going down with this ship. It's a Titanic,
Fair
baby.
enough.
We're
Fair
going
enough.
down together.
All right. Well, like I said, I think that we have laid out a couple good arguments on both sides of this debate, and that's the whole point of this podcast. So what we want to do this offseason and going forward is just very heated debates like this one, where you have people on both sides of it, strong opinions on both sides. We want to lay out both of those arguments, and you can see who you agree with more on each topic. So I think we laid out pretty good arguments on both sides. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we shut this thing down?
No, I just say, everybody out there, give us some people in there and let us know what we're doing. Let us know who's right or wrong, why I'm right, why Calvin's wrong. That's what we're here for. Hit that subscribe button. We see a lot of growth. We really appreciate you guys since January. We basically started this thing in January, so just keep going for us. And, let us know why you're a Mixon truther. I appreciate all you out there. You're one of us, so stay with me.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week, the inaugural episode of the Dynasty Debates series that I'm going to be doing. Thank you, Kevin, for coming on here and talking it over with me. I got a lot. I can't lie. I'm still leaning on the Clyde Edwards Helaire side of this one, but I think you laid out a pretty good argument why people should consider Mixon in their leagues and their drafts coming up. But thank you guys again for listening. Please be sure to comment, like, subscribe to the video on YouTube. It helps us with the algorithm, get the video out to more people so we can get more ears and more people listening to these debates and get their opinions as well. So just a little bit of a suggestion as a comment. Let us know who you want to hear debated in the upcoming weeks. It might not always be Kevin on here with me, but I'm going to be definitely trying to get other people in the Dynasty community as guests on the podcast, get their opinions on some of these hot topic Dynasty debates. Now, you can either lay out player versus player like we just did with Clyde versus Mixon, or you can do a single player like Miles Sanders, the pros and the cons of Miles Sanders. Is he good or is he not? So let us know what you guys want to hear. Comment down below. Thank you guys so much for listening, and good night.
Did you get all that? If not, make sure you head over to hammercast.com, subscribe, and join the Hammer Nation. Until next time, keep grinding.